Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We launch our second session. It's related to sectoral science technology Foresight, and our first presentation will be made remotely from Singapore. It will be made by Sara Chi. It will be devoted from National University of Singapore, and it will be devoted to strategic foresight on robotics in Singapore. Sara, do you hear me? Hi, Sara. Hi, Sara. Do you hear me? This is Alexander. Sara. Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so thank you very much for joining us, and we are looking forward for your presentation. You can start now.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Yes. Ждем?
Она должна открыть презентацию
окей.
и сама поделиться. Правда, это тестирование.
Okay.
Just 1 minute. She's opening
Yes, hello
presentation.
everyone. This is Sara Chi. Thank you for having me on this session. And I'm sorry that I cannot join you. I wanted very much to. And but it's really my pleasure to share with you the work that I've done on strategic foresight on robotics in Singapore for the past 1 year. And I understand that I have like about 15 minutes to run through this. And I will start by just sharing what is the background of this study. I will go through the introduction, followed by methodology, and finally, then of course, a Q&A. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you very much. Please go on.
Okay. So a quick overview of this research objectives. I was working on this project with the National Robotics Program Office of Singapore to identify the key service-oriented robotics research trends for the next 10 years. And we also wanted to know what are the robotics R&D roadmap for commercialization and planning for Singapore for until 2030. So with these objectives in mind, we also look at the research scope of two areas. Market insight, for being a country with some challenges such as a very small country with an aging population. We wanted to look at the healthcare industry, how service-oriented robots applications can be used for healthcare, in consumer engagement, in care delivery, in smart hospital. And the second market area that we also wanted to focus on was the environment, looking at cleaning as well as the waste management.
Excuse me, Sara. We don't see your presentation, your slides.
Oh, you haven't seen? You can't see it? Okay.
Maybe you'll check.
Okay, let me check. Can you see it now?
Yes. Now it's okay.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Все отлично.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe just let me back up. The research objectives were to look at service-oriented robotics research plans for the next 10 years. And also with a view to developing a commercialization and R&D roadmap. So So we know that for industrial robots, there's already a lot of development work. But Singapore, being primarily a service-oriented country, where 70% of GDP were contributed by the service industry, we wanted to look at a more complex kind of the service robots that can function outside the production floor, outside the industrial environment. Robots that can interact with human beings and that can do more complex kind of tasks to enhance productivity and also to provide better quality of care. So the research scope case focus on healthcare as well as the environment. So we wanted to look at healthcare, how to engage the consumers and deliver care to patients in a better way. And for the environment, we also wanted to make sure that we have cleaning and waste management done in a more efficient, more productive way. Now for robotics research areas, actually there are many, very, very wide area. But we had several focus, and this focus were in 5 key areas. One has to do with fusion of the sensors for autonomous navigation that we normally see in autonomous vehicles. And these sensors include GPS, sensor with regard to geographical location, distance, and so on. And second area we also wanted to focus on was on-chip light detection and ranging technology, LiDAR for short. This is very important when it comes to detecting distance ranges in agricultural and also in autonomous vehicles. The third type of technology we wanted to focus on was tactile skin, which is essentially trying to mimic the human skin for a skin that is as sensitive as the human skin for the covering of the robots. And the fourth area is on robotic retinas with computer vision, which is essentially functioning as a hand. Try as much as possible to mimic the human hand with integrated perception. And the fifth type is very modular, reconfigurable kind of mobile robot systems that can disassemble as well as reassemble themselves into blocks to shape-shifting kind of robots cleaning. So this is the research scope. And so in this study, use the methodology of Forsaight. Is look at the 5 phases from Professor Austin Saritas Forsyte, 5 phases from intelligence, imagination, integration, interpretation, and extension. So each of these stages that there are different Forsyte techniques that we use for the study. And on top of that, we also looked at quality function deployment method for performance identification quality characteristics for future road mapping. So I will just summarize the studies that we had because the project took about 10 people over a period of 12 months. So but I just condensed the findings here. For the first phase, intelligence, we used horizon scanning, and these are the findings, where we identified the future drivers of healthcare, primarily medical cost escalation, and there's a transformation in our industry for healthcare, where we kind of divide healthcare industry into primary, tertiary, and secondary, and kind of aggregate the acute emergency kind of cases, and provide them with more immediate kind of resources, whereas those that are secondary or tertiary hospice care kind of services, then we would use them, look after them with a community hospital kind of set. And then also understand that there's urgent consumer power, patients are becoming more aware, and also they want to be more in control of their health status and track their own health status. So with these drivers in the healthcare, we identified 3 key factors in operational efficiency, clinical excellence, and patient centricity. So the kind of applications we identified from healthcare are logistic management, indoor cleaning, hospitals, surgical hospitals, telemedicine, and rehabilitating, such as exoskeletons for rehabilitation of patients. And then for the environment, we look at the market drivers in urbanization. Now, Singapore is a very dense country. In fact, when I did the search, I was surprised to find Singapore was the third densest city in the world. To measure the number of people we have per square kilometers, we have already exceeded Hong Kong, which is 7,000 per square kilometer, 7,000 people per square kilometer. Singapore has already reached 8,000, and we are second only to, we are third to Monaco and to Macau. With such densely populated, ultra-urbanized environment, we need a kind of robotic solution. To give an example, robots that they work well in Japan, in Europe, because the hospitals or the environment, the roadways, I think, like robots to move up and down the aisle to service their cars. In Singapore, that's not possible because the paths are narrow and there are a lot of human beings moving around, even in the hospital or on the streets. So we need a very intelligent kind of robots that can continue with their task without being interrupted by human traffic. So that's the urbanization as a driver. And then slowing workforce and aging population, you'll need firm to be able to replace our labor. So, and the key sectors looked at were cleaning, outdoor and indoor cleaning, as well as for waste management that can include waste recycling, sorting, and also disposal. And then for applications, we identified professional outdoor cleaning, collection, and waste recycling. So based on the horizon scanning findings, we move on to literature review, and we also did a pattern analysis. And we derived roadmaps. These are actually more like technology roadmaps, the technology R&D programs and resources and capabilities for each of these 5 technology areas. And so with this findings in the intelligence phase, we move on to look at the imagination phase. What are some of the scenarios and the images that we can map out for healthcare and environment? So we conducted actually several rounds of workshops. First with the experts, with the technical research community, and then with people from the public agencies, government agencies, and from members of the public and from business and community. And from there, with scenario stories, we managed to map out some use cases for healthcare as well as for environment. So in healthcare, again, there was a lot of interest in surgical robots, rehabilitative robots, wearables, wheelchair, delivery assistive devices. And for environment, we had crawling robots, wall climbing robots that can help us clean very difficult corners that even humans can't clean. Where humans can't go, that these robots can go clean difficult areas. So, and then moving on to the integration phase, we did a Delphi study to validate trends and also the impact and competency, as well as forecast realization of each of these areas. And interestingly, we found that for autonomous and LiDAR vehicles, for LiDAR and autonomous vehicles, the commercialization and demonstration, as well as R&D, seem to be shorter compared to RIPA. And this was actually in line with our expectation, because there's a lot of innovation, a lot of interest in these 2 areas by governments, by private sector in other countries. However, RIPA seems to be an overlooked area because a lot of the existing players seem to be just focusing on very standard RIPAs to make the pick up very standard object. So we see an opportunity in this area. However, when it comes to the widespread use, we think that it should be the other way, where the autonomous vehicle and LiDAR should take a longer time for widespread use. Reason being that there's a lot of regulations for transport industry, as well as for the environment, to make sure that these vehicles are safe, especially for driverless vehicles, to be able to navigate among humans, among crowded areas. And because of this, we think that the widespread use should be longer compared to refer, meaning that the green and orange line should actually exceed the blue line. So these are some of the observations of the integration phase. And then we move on to the interpretation phase, where we also wanted to look at how do we integrate all the different research technologies area together, develop a roadmap for healthcare and environment. So what I show here is just one of the examples of the integrated roadmap. You can see that many different levels of technology, from T1 to T13, T15, and research program 1 to 15. This is also because we identified actually many areas, many levels of expertise that we need to incorporate in order to develop the same technology level for over the next 10 years. And then in the interpretation phase, we also look at the roadmap for cleaning in the environment. Again, in this area, we could see that for vacuum cleaning, for surface mopping, and panel cleaning, we need different types of robotics technologies. Okay. Then in the final phase, the intervention phase, we went on to interview about 14 stakeholders from the robotics ecosystem, comprising the R&D system integrators and adopters. And we evaluated the technology in 4 dimensions. Technology dimension in terms of the competitive advantage, the commercialization dimension in terms of risk, project deliverables, engagement with stakeholders, and the principal investigator, and dimension of the market potential. So with this framework, came up with a commercialization roadmap. Okay, and we also use the quality of function deployment, essentially the house qualities, to identify and rank the quality statistics as well as the requirements of the future applications and products. And it was very useful actually for us to be able to map out the commercialization strategy at each of these whole projects. Okay, so yeah, I have come to the end of my presentation. I'd like to open for question and answer.
Okay, we are very grateful for your presentation. Thank you very much. If there are any questions to Sara at the moment. It seems no questions so far. So thank you very much, and we'll continue with the next presentation. Okay, thank you, Sara. Okay. Our next presentation is about Foresight for urban development. It will be made by Joseph Ravец from University of Manchester, United Kingdom. So the floor is yours. Right? I'll give you the.
And 15 minutes?
Yes. No, 15 minutes plus a little bit more. Okay.
So, thank you for inviting me. Very nice to be here. My first time in Russia and in Moscow. And I look forward to more collaboration. I would like to try some ideas. Shall I sit down?
You could sit down or keep your microphone.
Okay, can you hear me okay? So this is about foresight, and it's about cities. And here I would like to explore foresight for cities, foresight by cities, foresight with cities. These mean different things in different places. And what I discovered this morning from China, Japan and Russia is if you have a policy and political system which is all about long-term planning and rational government and a sense of purpose, in technology development, etc., then foresight is very, very useful, and all the big data is even more useful. If we are in a different kind of country, which maybe is like the UK at the moment, and others, US, Latin America maybe, I don't know, it's more open, it's more chaotic. It's difficult to say what the government wants because they disagree with themselves. It's difficult to say what cities need or want because there are many different forces pulling in different directions. So then we have another kind of role for foresight. I think, as Alexander Shulok mentioned this morning, from problem solving to opportunity exploring. So this is turned to illustrate some work in progress on that theme. So the background, well, we did studies for the European Commission, and we did analysis of 12 mega trends, and this is the one on cities. And as you can see, cities can be wonderful and beautiful. They can also be big and bad. And then we have other things also going on, an algorithm economy, hyper surveillance capitalism, and new forms of human experience with digital or chemical, biological enhancement, etc. These are just 4 of the 12 trends. I'll show you the rest another time. And the point then is to say, okay, if we are living in an urban world, this drawing comes from UNICEF, and then we say, okay, where is the big urban growth from now into the future which we can see? And this is a long story, but this is just an overview. And then we say, okay, what are the policymakers doing or thinking? This is a project for the European Commission I worked on, Cities of Tomorrow, very good. And these are the challenges which they put to experts and stakeholders. And as you can see, these are really serious challenges. Where is the money? Sorry, we don't have much. And if we then say, can we turn this into policy? Well, then we have the European style of making policy. Everything is very rational. We have territorial cohesion. This sounds good. What does it mean in practice when the cities are struggling with no money and social divisions and problems and technology change, which is taking away the jobs, and so on and so on? So then we also look to the World Bank and other places, and this is their summary of the response to the city problem. And we say, okay, plan, sounds good, how do we do it? And do we have the tools, the methods, the resources, the structures needed for planning? And the answer is no, not yet. And so on and so on. So the point is, the city thing is surrounded by challenges which we do not know how to solve. And this all comes to the surface. Some of you might have heard in the UK we have a little local problem called Brexit, and this is some of the scenarios which we did before and after, and as you can see, some of the scenarios are very bad indeed for some people, but good for others, good for the billionaires actually, and there is the possibility that cooperation, peace and progress can take place. But it is only a possibility. If we had done foresight in advance and made it into a rational political policy discussion at all levels of government and civil society, then yes, Brexit might be easier to solve. But it was not like that. The government was pushing and pulling. There was chaos everywhere. There was the rise of fake news and so on, and many factors. So this is one example. So if we say foresight for cities, okay, well, I was working on a UK foresight. It's one of the biggest in the world, and 6 themes, all looks very good. And here's the map of what was going on in the cities. And then we say, okay, how did they do this? How did we do this? Working papers, workshops, visits, futures, visions, and these are some of the stakeholders. And then we say, okay, what is really going on? And the experts wanted to talk about open questions on transformation and new opportunities. The cities wanted to talk about how are we doing in the ranking. And you see, here is London and in Manchester, and this is before 2001 and 2020. How do they do in the ranking? Is this one number 3 or number 7? Sorry. And so there was this pushing and pulling in the Foresight exercises for political reasons, structural reasons, which are not only to do with the people in the cities saying, are we number 7 or number 39? Also to do with how people think and how their jobs are constructed and how the organisations are given objectives and resources. So, come back to that. This is the system diagram for the National Foresight. I won't talk about it in detail, but it all looks very rational. And then we say, okay, what was going on in the city network? So I organised a study on the city network which asked the questions: who is involved in this foresight? Which sectors? When and where are the boundaries? How is it done? How much funding? And what might happen next? And we discovered 3 different types of foresight in these cities. We had a vision focus with NGOs and mobilisation, with creative media, film, video, theatre sometimes, and so on. So some good examples from a bunch of cities. Then we had a strategic policy focus, focus on spatial planning, public participation if possible. And then we had an academic focus which was more to understand the systems. So this was useful to know because the previous assumption of the Foresight unit was that, yes, the cities will all be the same and they will all exchange and learn. What we found was that the 22 cities were all pulling in very different directions and the centre could not hold them together. And what we found in Manchester, in our project, I think we were involved in this, and here is Manchester Town Hall, and here is the new shopping centre, and here is the Minister of Finance from the right-wing government, and they say, yes, what did the future do for us? Why bother about the future? And so let's not waste any time. Let's just privatise, sell it off, and then this will be progress and growth. So this is a very, sceptical view of the Foresight process, but this was more or less the reality at that time. So we have to be very careful. If we talk about Foresight by cities, okay, well, there is a process of strategic planning in spatial planning, economic planning. It doesn't always work very well, but we use a scenario approach where we can, and we have some kind of feedback loop from the long term to the 5-year plan. And it looks something like that. And again, not to talk about the detail, but to say, yeah, this is a model of how we try to do scenario long-range planning, strategic planning, and then use some of the Foresight tools to make scenarios which are pushing out the range of possibilities in population, economic growth, etc. What we then find is, okay, here is a small diagram of the same picture. This works very well if we know what we are talking about. We can measure the population, we can measure the GDP. If we are not sure what we are talking about, then we are talking about known unknowns and unknown knowns. It's a different kind of game. And for the scenarios, we are not just talking about more or less people or more or less GDP. We're talking about some kind of transformation. And again, this is a very different game. So the example here is where can we build our 10,000 houses? And the example there is to say, how do we grow a livable and sustainable, prosperous community? We might need the 10,000 houses, but we need a whole lot more things. And who can decide exactly what that is and how to measure it? These are open questions. So then we say, okay, let's get more systematic. And then we have, okay, so we have a scenario model. This comes from a low carbon city work, which is still in progress. And then we analyze the different scenarios for the growth, the demand side, the supply side, and the external pressure, and so on. And then we say, okay, to achieve this demand side, we need to create new kinds of synergy between different parts of the system, between maybe the social behavior and the technology and the politics and the economics and the finance and so on. So this is then, we have to deal with so-called boundary objects, which can link the more complex qualitative information here to here and back to the scenario model and then back again. So we have some kind of feedback loop between the quantitative and the qualitative. This is an example, you might recognize this city, and this comes from the global data set which we are now using. And you might recognize, if there are any urban planners here, the difference between 1975 and 1990, 2000, 2015, and so on. Why are we doing this? Well, because then we project into the future. We have a new project which is on the urban expansion and the climate environment. And this, it's all new, so the presentation is not really well finished. But we are trying to link the local with the global scale of analysis and modelling, and then at both scales, then bring in the qualitative discussion, because it's clear, in order to make progress, this is not something which will come out of the computer. We need the data and the mapping, in this case, to say, yeah, what are the trends? Where are the hotspots? What are these wider effects, around the city where the agriculture is being changed, the ecosystems are being destroyed in many cases. Maybe Moscow is very well planned, I think, in contrast to many other cities. Am I right? But there are always problems which come up with urban expansion. So this is one example of the Foresight in process, in application to a new global project. And to do this, we're using a platform, and the platform has two main parts. One is a human level discussion, and the other is a technical information base. I won't talk about the detail of it, but the human level is actually more interesting in many ways, because then we say, okay, what do we know? What is possible? What can we imagine or vision? And then what do we do? The method is similar in many ways to the 5I systemic foresight method. In fact, it was developed about the same time. And that's the description. So that is a project plan, but it is also a general methodology, which then helps to do foresight with cities, where we are not only studying the city like a bunch of experts around the table, we are enabling and enhancing the urban systems and the transformation of these systems, using something from the foresight tools and methods. So here we have an urban system where innovation is taking place, but it is not working well. The universities are chasing their own tail, their academic metrics. Well, this is a big problem in the UK. Our measurement system is really a problem for innovation and collaboration, particularly if we are trying to connect the universities to the city, the wider triple helix, so-called. So we can go around the table in great detail. The business has to make a short-term profit, so they don't have much time for innovation. They're meeting a demand side, which is just about consumption of materials, and so on. Then we say, okay, is there an alternative? Maybe the universities could be one part of a distributed system of learning and co-creation between all the parts of society. We call this now a multiversity. Not a university, but a multiversity. And then we say, okay, how could the business contribute to this? How could they finance? Could we get the finance to work with whole supply chains, not just individual businesses? And could we get the demand side to work better? And then from the cartoons, we jump over to a more analytical framework. Say, okay, let's analyze the relations between the different stakeholders in the problem situation and the opportunity situation. These are just examples from a project in Manchester at the moment. So the point is, the Foresight, in this case, is enabling a larger transformation of the urban system. And this is, of course, a long story, so I won't say too much, but of course we have to communicate at all times. So we use the story of the elephant, where you might know the story of the elephant, and is it a tree, or is it a rope, or is it something we cannot even describe? And then say, okay, what is the alternative? The elephant is in the mind. The elephant is something that we can visualize and is part of the community. So that's a little story which we can tell. Then finally, we get to say, okay, what if there was a Foresight vision for the city which was all about building the collective urban intelligence, not just doing a very clever study on technology 10 years from now, but helping the city as a whole to grow and develop, not just in GDP, but in human quality of life, etc. So then this brings up a cognitive systems analysis. And again, these are the cartoons. There are many diagrams behind them for anyone who wants the hard science. But we basically analyze different types of intelligence. This relates to the project from Brazil, actually. Very impressed with that. And we say, okay, if we have a clever city, it's really like a machine, and stuff comes in, products come out. In the process, usually some people get very rich and powerful, but there is a lot of waste and depletion. If we then say, okay, if we take an evolutionary approach, more like a smart city, we have the best technology, we have global supply chains, we have sophisticated market and financial incentives, but we are still spreading our waste and pollution around the world. We have to manage our democracy by the elite. This happens in every country, especially the UK. But our thinking patterns are more complex. They are more self-organizing, but they are still fragile and myopic, short-term thinking, because it's competition, Darwinian competition. And then we say, is there an alternative? So we talk about what kind of thinking patterns will work in a wiser city. And, well, there are many ways to describe this. I have tried a few. This is not the final answer at all. There are political models, economic models, and government, social models, and so on. So that is the background to what we are then trying to achieve. One example, again, not to talk in detail, but our analysis of local economic development. We can say, okay, here we have a clever city, it has quite good industry, the labour is skilled to do these jobs in the factories. Then we have an evolutionary city, because, by the way, this one is not stable. Forces happen and then it cannot adapt or grow, it cannot evolve. So then we end up with an evolutionary city, and this case is driven by finance. And you see the finance system is so big it goes right off the top of the picture. And by the way, the communities are now insecure, vulnerable, precarious, etc. And then we say, okay, is an alternative? And this is exactly what our people in the 22 cities of the UK and many other parts of the world, this is what they are trying to find. This is what is at the back of people's minds, even while they are saying, yeah, we need more GDP, we need more investments, we need bigger factories, more high tech, and so on. So this is one example where the systems transformation goes beyond a simple projection of, high or low GDP, although the GDP is still important, of course. So all three of these different types of systems are necessary. It's not to say that number 3 is better than number 1. We need all. And this is really the contribution of a Foresight. So we use a process model, again, in 4 stages. And this is here, I say process, because these are the humans. In our experience so far, maybe we are actually, behind the frontier of the technology. In our small island, the humans seem to be more important, because without the humans we cannot decide what we are trying to achieve. So we say, okay, what is our problem? What is this system? Do we know how it works? What evidence is available? Then we go to the scenarios and say, okay, future trends and scenarios, this is very well known. And then we go to the synergies, which is to say, what can we envision? What could be different? How can the system transform? And then we go to the pathways, strategies, to say, okay, what shall we do? We may go around this circle a number of times. It may take 3 hours or 3 years, depending on how much time we have. So then we can say, okay, there is a more systematic approach. We can go around the circle in different ways, and here we have a number of different laboratory formats. Mind lab, future lab, synergy lab, strategy lab, etc. And then we use visual thinking, both offline and online, to help organize complex qualitative information. There is more in the material, which in the links. And then we say, okay, how can this work? Not only in the lab, but in the city as a whole. So then we talk about different flows, different structures, innovation spaces, experiment spaces, stepping stones and milestones, keystones, activity flows, and thinking spaces. So this is a visualization of a very complex set of actions and structures. But we find also a visualization is really important. If we give our public or our stakeholders a flow chart, a system diagram, half of them will look at it and say, what? They don't get it. We give them a story with a picture, and many more will get it. So that's why we do this. So next steps, well, I have a brief commercial break. This is the new book coming out as soon as possible on the net. And so this is Thinking in Progress, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. Our next. So hopefully we can ask questions in the end of the session. And our next presentation will be made by Yaroslav Ashihmin from Moscow International Medicine cluster in Russia. It will be about translation medicine in Russia.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
The phone? Can I take the phone? Hello. Working. My name is Yaroslav. I'm a practicing cardiologist. Also worked as a CEO advisor of International Medical Cluster. But take a timer.
I will follow.
Okay. But here my personal opinion will be highlighted. Those have no conflict of interest. So I would like to highlight the aspects of the most modern technology of translational medicine. Who familiar with this? Nobody? Great. because this technology and this methodology of translational medicine will become the most important technology in medical fields in the I think 10 to 20 years we will live with this. So, but to start, I would like to say some words about the personalized medicine. Who are familiar with personalized medicine? That's not great. That's not about the personalization using the psychological characteristics or the physical features of the patients. That's now based on the biomarkers and genomic markers. So here you see the example of personalization, how it looks like from the patient's perspective. This patient has a HER2 mutation. She's lucky because there is a drug that's working on this target mutation. When the girl have no target mutation, breast cancer, there is no drug. So the patient feeling that that's a personalized. So, but going to see what's happened under the hood of this treatment. So, I have a cancer, different cancer types. One have HER2 mutation, other was no. And the scientists decide to make the treatment for the one of a very type of cancer. We decide this to work with this aim and go to the clinical trials. And then after the cascade of the clinical trials, we became the personalized treatment for the very type of cancer. But for the other type of cancer, we have no treatment using this methodology. You see, that's very, very important and responsible moment the scientists decide. So, but the problem now that this approach is not so effective. When you see now the more than 80% of clinical trials are interrupted and going to the floodgates on the last phase 3 clinical trials part. So the science is not effective now, and the huge resources is going waste now. And the problem is some papers is never published, and we don't know what's happened on the bench. And the new generation of scientists going to do the same mistakes that was done in the previous time. So how to do with this? We have the special methodology to remove the barriers between the basic science and clinical practice. But there is two sides of the moon in this translational approach. When you see on this, you see what's happened. That's probably the situation that these guys don't know what's happened. But the second situation that this guy is industrial king of the soap empire. He have this soap and he needs to sell this soap. And this guy will buy this instead. There is no other possibility. That's what's happened in translational medicine. So that's a very strict, very opportunistic approach of methodology where we have, sorry for Russian here, where we have the disease, we are finding the biomarkers and targets in disease, we generate the hypothesis, then go into studies using biological models, then to clinical trials. And on the finish, we will have the medication that treat this disease, not other disease. So if you will be genius, you have a genius idea within this process, but that's not the link with this very disease from the other, like in Viagra case, that the drug for the heart dysfunction firstly was, but the Viagra take some interest in adverse effects, yeah, and then the scientists switch to the other adverse effects of Viagra. So that's not translation. Translation is this very strict way. And then the drug needs to go to the real world clinical practice. And the translational medicine working with these two blocks. The first is from the bench to the bedside, and second block is the block to go to the national Ministry of Health healthcare system. So, but the question is, do the other way? That's simple, you say. No. The problem that in the 20th century, the science developed during absolutely different way. That was based on the genius ideas that go into the inside in the head of genius. Like you remember the story of penicillin. When the Fleming take the penicillin, he don't think about the commercialization and treatment of infection, yeah? And the Werner Forssmann, who is a Nobel Prize laureate that opened the interventional cardiology sphere. Now you all know about that stenting, for example. He's the king of stenting, the #1 person. He takes the self-catheterization of the right atrium with the urological catheter, don't thinking about the future effect. He take the picture and go to the chief and say, I do this, but chief says, you crazy. You see, that's absolutely different way. But what we see now, what is the problem itself now with today, with modern way of the clinical trials. So, I have the guys on the bench. These guys very familiar with methodology, with molecular biology. And the first step is to make the molecule with desired properties. Then to conduct preclinical trials faster and cheaper. Then we go into the clinics, and here there is very interesting guys. They call trialists. The trialists idea is to blur weaknesses or cover up the flaws of the molecule that go in from here, because they #1 idea and purpose to make the cell to sell the molecule as expensive as possible. And then if these moleculi go into phase 3 clinical trials, here the most famous physicians and worldwide authorities, the best physicians, is taking the moleculi that going through this way, and the authority of these guys so high they don't like to make the false positive results. And this guys is forced to work with moleculars chosen by big pharma in this process. It's absolutely no responsibility of these guys. These guys say, oh, we do the molecular that you want. We don't think about the, what will be in the clinical phase 3 clinical trials. So, but there is no only evil thoughts making these problems. The other problem is we see on the disease from the absolutely different ways. So I'm a clinician. I don't thinking about the money. And national statistics as Ministry of Health. I thinking about the passion of disease, about the pain of patients that I would like to relieve. The pathologists see on the tissues, molecular biologists see on the molecular pathways. These mega grant recipients is usually like psychiatrical patients they see on the grants, and financial director of farm thinking about the money. So how to make the good ecosystem to collaboration of such different partners of the drug development, not only drugs, the technology development and healthcare. So there is a special methodology. I say that that's really opportunistic, very strict, very strict, to improve and standardize the interaction between the different participants of the pathway of the new technology development. So the first, we here have the excellent master of the methods and fundamental knowledge on the bench. On the bedside, we're thinking about the disease. We know all about the clinical feature. So, firstly, the unmet need to be generated from the bedside, or from economists, not from these guys. Because here you see the many ideas. The engineers say that I have wonderful idea to help you. No, I'm sorry, you don't know the unmet need. Then these guys need to explain the methods, because here the problem that if the clinicians don't know the methodology of the preclinical trial, that go into the problems at the phase 3 eventually. So together they go into the search of the targets and molecules. That's not only the responsibility of these guys, they're doing together. Then they determine together the program of preclinical studies of the candidate molecule and technology. And then, the very important, when the phase 1 or phase 2 early phases of clinical trials is going, you can do the additional preclinics using the all the special properties of the moleculi that was surprise at the phase 2 or phase 1 clinical trial to reveal what's happened with this molecule. And on the each step, you need to perform yearly health technology assessment. That's very important because probably if you see the genius drugs, very, very good, but if you see what is the price for the final customer or for the market, you can see that that's not go to develop it because it's too expensive. So, and go into another plane of the translational medicine, you can see this rotor. Here, the money is in center now. You remember that stakeholders have the so strong position. We need to we need to harmonize all our will and desire with money using the HTA assessment. But that's not only, because you need to use fundamental studies. You use the methods of evidence-based medicine, also ensure the medical ethics and opportunities of lobbying, and use the data from the epidemiology, that means the burden of disease, and psychological aspects. And this works in the different ways. You remember that we have the good drugs and technologies to treat heart disease and cancer, yeah? That's going from this way. But only some last years ago we received the treatment for malaria. Yeah, because in some years the amount of deaths from malaria was higher than from the heart disease. But nobody interested to make the drug for malaria because people have no money. That's a very important issue. So, we're going to Russia. What's happened here? When I was in Pavilion of Angola on Expo, I see this picture, guys from Angola clearly say that they can do the simple, pure water. The problem in Russia that we afraid to confess that we couldn't do now the simple medicine. We worry about this and we're frustrated because the medicine, simple medicine in Russia, like the water in Angola, the simple clear water in Angola. No, I think I have 8 minutes because I have timer. I have 20 minutes and I have special timer.
Up to you.
Sorry, thanks. No, up to you. Then we interested in special innovations, but don't remember about the water. So, but we have some positive stuff. We have the teams that's small teams that working on the modern technologies using translational medicine. That's usually the states universities, mostly supported by federal grants. That's the centers of Moscow, St. Petersburg, Vladivostok, Blagoveshchensk, Kazan, Novosibirsk, Tomsk. But here, you see, if you hearing the Russian expert who's saying that he works in the field of translational medicine, you need to remember the smoke and mirror strategy that usually use Potemkin village in Russian empires, and that's like oases. The only few groups is working really in the field of the translational medicine. Other than thinking they're doing good things, but they usually use methods like this, not modern. That's why it's not real. So, and regarding the particular universities, that's on the top, they do really good things. That's College, Endocrinological Science Center, that's Oncological Center named after Dima Rogachev. Only so not so many. And some private companies. I would like to highlight the Stem Cell Institute, National Bioservice. So the perspectives here. the Skolkovo and our international medical cluster and small private companies might be go as drivers. The progress really is hampered by educational, political issues and legal rather than fundamental deficit. And integration into the international biomedical society is of critical importance. That's my last slide. So we try to make the special atmosphere and special ecosystem in our medical cluster that's based on this absolutely new federal law. How to go? Might I ask you to? Можно последний слайд включить? We have the special federal law that's probably doing the special medical. Можно последний включить слайд? We now making the medical offshore, where we can use the technologies that not licensed in Russia and to take the specialists that have no Russian license to work in this field. And now we have the conversation and negotiation with some European institutions that go in this cluster, and our idea is to make the really working ecosystem on this small particular land, very small. So, and I think we have possibilities to make it in the best way, because you know that the Russia now is enclosing, and probably this might be the small part. And for me, it's very important to keep the flame of the real science probably in this small region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mikhail. We probably ask questions in the end of this session. Okay, so our next presentation, the last presentation of this session, will be made by Сезар Аугусто Коста from CGE, from Brazil, the same institution. It will be devoted to Observatory of Space Technology, how to keep track of technological novelties and trends. Please go ahead.
First, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. What I'm talking about today is the activity that we developed in the Observatory of Space Technology in CGU, keeping tracking of technology all around the world and how we can use these trends to improve this kind of technology inside Brazil and make it possible for economical growth. This is a continuation of Marcia's presentation inside our institution. We have been developing some tools, and we call this an insight family because it gives insights to the people that work with analysis to create some projects and solutions for problems that are holding Brazilian development. So basically, they are 4 tools. The first one will be the Insight Survey, where we collect information about the specialists in a determined subject. So we recruit some specialists to answer some questions about the problems that we are solving. So that help us to create some knowledge about how to perform a right action to solve a problem that we are facing. So it's basically a structured survey, and this guides us to a perception analysis of the problem. We also have a database that is collecting documents all around the world related to science and technology and innovation. We call Insight Data.
Excuse me, could you speak louder or keep closer?
Can you hear me? Okay. This tool helps us to map the trends So we collect terms that are related to the subject, and from these terms we search it all around the scientific production around the globe, also the market trends that are related to that subject, and also the technological production and evolution of these terms around time. We have inside data, InsideNet, that uses the social network analysis to look for collaboration networks, mapping and the evolution of these networks and how it behaves along time and inside our subject. It also helps us to identify people that are skilled in solving that kind of problem, and also detect gaps inside our scientific community in that if they are not capable to solve the problem that we are looking for the solution. And also, it performs an identification of the potential collaborations all around the world. And this tool is Insight Tech. It's a new tool that we are developing. So we use an approach that can observe the technology and see how ready it is for use, and if we need to develop some critical technologies to be able to use this kind of technology. So it brings out of the idea and make it concrete. So the Space Technology Observatory is basically CGE initiative to support the Brazilian space sector in activities that are related to science, technology, and innovation inside this sector. We provide intelligence services for this sector by monitoring development and the evolution of technologies that can give potential economical growth for the system, and also identify trends and opportunities for the space sector in Brazil to fulfill all the Brazilian needs in the space sector. So why to invest in the space area? Basically because it's a very profound area that brings a lot of big economic development. Today we have around $350 billion invested in this sector all around the world, including satellite services and satellite construction and launching. So the trend is exponential growth. So we can forecast that basically by 2040 we're going to have more than $1 billion invested in this sector. So it's a huge economical opportunity that cannot be forgotten. So how can it support an economical growth? There is a lot of programs inside Brazil that are trying to master some critical technologies in many strategic sectors. We know that the space sector, when a new technology rises inside this sector, all the technologies are falling through. So this program also deals with human resource management. So we identify expertise inside the country and can promote this institutional management to deal with these people. So also it can support international collaboration decisions because we can make wiser choices in to which country we can start a collaboration to develop a new technology. Also offer some support for decision if it's worth to work on developing that technology or simply buy it from another place. And also define the strategic programs that are essential for the sector growth. We trace technological roadmaps and also work with the technology nationalization of these subjects. So this is one example of our products, we were also writing scientific papers that are submitted to specialized journals. So this is one of our articles that promoted especially this, is the nationalization of technology. All of this is based in one process where we have an input that's basically a quick question. So we use the insight data to go all the technical scientific publications in that area, construct a taxonomy of terms that are related to the problem, and look into patents and use related to that. So we go through the national expertise, or we look inside our science and technology system to look for people that can deal with this problem. And also we monitor all the technology trends that are rising around the world, so we are able to detect when a new technology becomes important, and we write reports and do statistics about it. So our base subject of observation is 26 technology domains that involve 101 technology subdomains and 320 technology groups. So we monitor all of these topics. So from that we can identify when a new technology is rising and propose some projects based on the phase of project. Defining the mission, the requirements to fulfill that project, defining the project in the stage of verification and production. From that, we select the experts using a Brazilian database. So we have the Lattice platform, that is a collection of information that is self-filled by the researchers in Brazil. So we have all the information about the scientific production of researchers in Brazil, and all the capabilities in universities and research centers. So from there, we analyze what are the actual capabilities of these experts in building collaborations and so on. And then we analyze for that specific project what it needs using the insight tech, because we overview a technology and see each component is needed to build it. So we that plot. This plot shows each component of a technology and how critical it is for the project completion. So from this analysis of criticality and technological readiness level, we are able to distribute the production of a technology inside the country to the experts that can build it. So this is a way to bring the foresight of a new technology to the next level, that we actually write a project to fulfill that need in Brazil. So we start collecting the data, analysis, from the analysis of the data, and then build a project that can be executed by Brazilian experts. So this is one example of technology monitoring that we have been doing for the past years. The CubeSats, they are small satellites. It's actually a cube of 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters. So from the 2010 to now, this technology has been growing exponentially. So we did a prediction that by the end of 2008, the 1,000th CubeSat would be launched. So this was confirmed on 27th of December, the past year. So with 1 year before this fact actually happened, we knew exactly when this CubeSat would be launched. So this is an approach that we use in a logistic model to see when a technology would be available and how fast is going to be growing. So these results were also published in a paper showing the regression models that we use for doing forecasting. So this is our new tool that we are still developing. Marcio already showed something. The movie that Marcio showed something about documents, how documents relate to each other. This one is actually research groups. So each cluster represents a research group that works on one subject related to the space sector inside Brazil. So with this tool, we are able to locate the expertise of each group and find the most appropriate person or group to work in that technology. Can you click it just to run the movie? So this gave us a new perspective about the groups, how they related to each other. So we can collect the metadata that is related to each node. So we know exactly the person, where he's working, what is the subject that he's working on, and how useful he is to, or she is to solve our problem. So we can find the most central person to solve the problem, always having in mind a key question about the technology that we want to develop. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I invite Marcio Miranda Santos as a discussant. If anybody has any questions to the speakers, yes, please. Can you use microphone? Yeah.
This is yours.
No problem.
English.
Up to you. Как хотите.
I'm Aldo Spremi, scientific attaché of the
Could you close?
Myself, I'm a neurosurgeon with a not bad H index, and I worked in Russia during the period of the Soviet Union as a neurosurgeon. So I had some experience on the ground, and I want to make my best congratulations to the colleague from the cluster, because he gave a very honest, very wise, very balanced relation in an environment where I understand it's actually focused on finding fundings, even private or public, for supporting special research. The problem of anybody involved in medicine is has to be balanced between intellectual honesty, industrial needs, and needs of the society. I want to simply give a few clues on the speech he did, which just to make it very clear to the audience, which is not specifically interested in medicine. The idea of personalized medicine is very good. It's actually the new look on any kind of well-organized medical system. But maybe the product that we've been waiting for will be a big difference between the survival of people who will have the possibility to utilize those trees in a routine base, and people who not. We would be reproduce the situation which was in the Middle East, where poor used to live a certain age and powerful rich some certain one, some different one. Which means that this is actually the logics of developing society in the future, but I don't know how acceptable will be in the European mentality. It doesn't mean that we have to stop. this is a fact that we have to start to consider. By the way, the idea of the cluster is very nice. I've been somehow contacted by Mikhail Yugai in the very first book, and he gave me the idea, which has actually the biggest advantage of breaking barriers, because barriers wherever insights are good just for giving problems. I can make a couple of examples. I am a member of the committee, Inter-Italo-Russian committee, which has to have a look on the collaboration in the sector of biomed. And one of the proposals is to make in a way that any drug which undergoes clinical trial in either country, and it's finished the clinical trial, could be registered automatically in 2 countries. This is an excellent idea, but he has lots of bureaucratic problems. Maybe the name of the cluster is actually one of the breaking this problem, which is very good. The problem of the cluster is the cultural, technical, and even psychological integration. I tell you, my colleague, that I worked in 5 different countries, and I had to learn the local language ever. Just an example, I tell you that when I worked in Cuba as the director of a national program of skeletal surgery, I had to learn Spanish, which I did because of skipping problems already in theater. So maybe creating a common language would be your problem, besides the fact that your success is more or less guaranteed. Thank you again for your excellent presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. More questions from the audience? Yes, please. Да, можно по-русски. Только ближе микрофон держите, пожалуйста.
А учитывает ли направление Форсайт в разных странах, то, как правило, в связи с тем, о чем говорили все презентации на этом нашем уважаемом собрании, как правило, государство будет делиться на определенные части, которые связаны с цифрой и традиционного плана, в зависимости от времени. Учитывал или нет? Будьте любезны. Потому что я этого не слышу.
Who will answer? One of the speakers, yeah?
А что за цифры традиционного плана? Что это за цифры?
Давайте, может быть, я отвечу, если я понял ваш вопрос верно. То есть вы говорите о том, что в государстве будут люди, так сказать, успешно вошедшие в digital era, да, и какие-то люди в цифровую эру, и люди, оставшиеся, так сказать, немножко в стороне от этого. Об этом идет речь, да? Да, но безусловно, это один из вызовов. Digital divide, он, я думаю, во всех форсайт-исследованиях, он, безусловно, является одной из центральных вещей, и, конечно, это обращает большое внимание. Особенно, когда речь идет о внедрении искусственного интеллекта, там возникает масса вопросов этического характера и много других. Если кто-то хочет добавить, да. Спикеров, пожалуйста.
Я вам на русском отвечу. В медицине мы говорим о часто абсолютно новых технологиях, о доказательной медицине, например, трансляционной, персонализированной, которая очень плохо воспринимается часто. И поэтому, честно говоря, я хочу вам ответить словами Макса Планка, который сказал, что новая научная истина торжествует не потому, что те, кто против нее, признают свою неправоту, просто они постепенно умирают, а подрастающее поколение знакомо с ней с самого начала. Мы все время идем против сопротивления.
Конечно, был великий человек, но боль не менее великий. Совет ничего лучше теории для хорошей практики. Так вот, нас придется огорчить для тех, кто обходил стороной вот эту как раз часть разговора. Я с удовольствием выступил о новых технологиях, но о влиянии на исследование Форсайта, которое говорит о будущем. Вы меня поняли?
Ну да. То есть вы говорите о том, в какой степени форсайт исследования, результаты форсайта используются для реальной жизни, да? Об этом? Но это, безусловно, вопрос центральный, вы правы абсолютно здесь. И мне кажется, все, кто делает форсайт в той или иной степени, должны... Если вы видели сегодня утром презентацию из Японии, например, да, вот она ровно вот отражает эту тенденцию, когда форсайт все в большей степени переходит от technology push, знаете, к market pull или там social pull. То есть он акцентируется не на том, что мы есть и пытаемся продвинуть, а скорее на том, в чем заключаются вопросы, связанные с развитием экономики, общества и людей обычных. Спасибо большое. Now I give the floor to Marcio for reflection on the session. Please.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I didn't have the opportunity to see all the presentations beforehand, but it makes my task here a little bit challenging in terms of finding, if I'm right in terms of the approach I'm taking, to find some points in common in between all of them. All very good presentations, focusing on different things, but one interesting point was exactly the one mentioned by Alexander just a seconds ago, that, foresight studies are gradually moving to tackle societal problems, which was very clear in if not all, most of all presentations. It was not necessarily that a couple of decades ago, where technological approaches are mainly oriented to industrial development, not necessarily looking to societal impacts of technological developments. But from most of the presentations, some of them very well structured foresight exercises, are now looking into the impacts of technological development. And this is very true in terms of looking in the agenda of institutions, how many of them are actually dealing with the comment made by the person that presented the question not long ago. The other perhaps common feature in between all of them is that it doesn't matter if this was well structured or not, there was a concept being developed, for instance, translational medicine or many other. From that concept, it was clear, not necessarily in an explicit form, that there must be a policy behind to support the concept. Doesn't matter if this is something related to development of cities, doesn't matter if this is something linked to environment protection, doesn't matter if this is something related to how to treat, alleviate problems as far as human health is concerned. But there must be a policy, and sometimes foresight exercise will not reach any point in time because of the lack of a given associated policy. And more important than perhaps having a concept, developing a policy, is to develop a strategy to really cause impact. And in this very point, some of the presentations actually made use of visualization techniques in order to promote the strategy, develop the strategy, and promote the strategy in order to reach some sort of impact. And I was very much impressed by, in many ways, how the presentations try to convey the message through some visualization techniques that would allow for the dialogue to be set and come up with some recommendations that will transform realities, which in the end of the day is the most important thing to achieve. So I try very hard to find something in common, but all of the presentations try to say something on how to go about transforming realities for the better. For the better. And I hope that funds will recognize agencies, families, and so on and so forth, recognize the importance of foresight to transform realities. So these are, Alexander, some very short comments that I was able to grab, in listening the presentations, all of them very good ones in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me thank all the speakers for this morning and this already afternoon. It was excellent, I guess, event so far. I hope the rest of the event will be exciting as well. So we are waiting all of you here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The next session will be devoted to a new methodology of foresight. It also must be very interesting, so you are kindly invited. So now we have a break. Thank you very much.